Hello and welcome everyone to the panel discussion at Quadrant Knowledge Solutions. A brief introduction. I am Kalpesh Parmar at Quadrant Knowledge Solutions. ESG is one of the most important topics across the world and also a topic for today's discussion. It's about technology strategies that drive ESG initiatives. This topic or this term does not necessarily require any kind of formal introduction, but this topic in general does. ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. As compared to corporate social responsibility, a concept that was established in 2005, which gained a lot of traction across the world. ESG, on the other hand, seeks a very different and comprehensive approach in the change of underlying business models. There are also numerous government and regulatory agencies who are enforcing it. Now, when we talk about enforcement, technology plays a very important role, and thank God that we basically have technology to save us. It also includes what to report and how. Before we go ahead and discuss this with our panel, let's basically have an introduction as compared to who's on our panel right now. I'll start clockwise. On my left, first hand is Mr. Narayan Gokhale, who heads the IoT and practice at Quadrant Knowledge Solutions, followed by Ms. Renu, who heads the security domain at Quadrant Knowledge Solutions, followed by Mr. Shekhar Jeetkar, who heads the marketing department, and Ms. Neelam Singh, who basically heads the retail, procurement, and supply chain domain. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Narayan, let's begin with you. Is ESG just doing good or more than that? And why is it so critical now?
Thanks, Kalpesh. I think that's an excellent question to kick off the discussions, this panel discussions. So ESG has already moved beyond doing good long time back. In fact, today we are in a situation that if we don't act now, or it is so critical that our planet's existence is at stake. So everyone has to act very fast. If you see over the last many years, what we have witnessed is climate change. So we've seen extreme temperatures, rainfall, drought, and we have seen air pollution, soil pollution. We have seen flora and fauna species getting extinct. So really the situation is very grim, and so ESG is no longer in the realm of doing good. It has already moved beyond that, and it's kind of save the planet now. So what is happening is now the situation is so grim that no one person, no one organization, no one country can really do anything in isolation. So whatever efforts have to be taken, they have to be taken on a global level. So when it comes to addressing such a mammoth problem on a global level, who else but United Nations can really help solve these problems? So United Nations has realized the criticality, as you just asked, about the situation. And way back in 2015, it came up with what is called as SDGs, that is the Sustainable Development Goals. They're laid out for all the organizations to follow. And later on in December 2015, there was Paris Agreement or Paris Accord, which for the first time in the history of United Nations was signed by all 195 nations. That shows the degree of the criticality that this particular question has. Also, so this created a lot of groundwork for the ESG initiatives to kickstart all over the world. And then organizations like WEF, which is the World Economic Forum, which is an international organization which is into a private and public partnership, they also created a lot of awareness, and they have a good say with private organizations globally. So they made awareness with all the communities and saying that no longer only investor interests are important. The so-called investor capitalism is no longer required, and what is really required is what is called as a stakeholder capitalism. The environment is at stake, so it's a stakeholder. The society is at stake, so they are a stakeholder. The government, of course, there is a lot of stake from the government. Plus, if you take an organization, then the employees, the contractors, the suppliers, the customers, everybody is a stakeholder, and so what is being now termed as a stakeholder capitalism. So this has created a lot of awareness among private companies, and that is the reason you see now everybody is now talking about ESG. And this really helped in creating this particular awareness. And so investors now want to invest in companies who have good ESG score, who have got good ESG disclosures. And of course, when we are doing such a big transition, it is technology which has to make it happen. And of course, it is the technology which will also be required to monitor the transition that is taking place. Thank you.
Thanks, Narayan. This is very insightful. Now that we know why and how is it gaining importance, we should understand who is mandating it and whether there are any regulatories or, let's say, agreements or any global initiative on ESG.
Thank you, Kalpesh. And as you see, the mic has moved to me. I'm going to answer that. First thing is drawing parallels from what Mr. Narayan said. World Economic Forum and bodies like that are definitely creating a lot of awareness, but mandating it is definitely in somebody else's hands. One is we talk about businesses, like they are the market movers, as I say. They are the ones, if they start mandating, I'm sure, they'll get a lot of traction from the shareholders as well. But let's talk about all the geographies. In US, the SEC, that is your Securities Exchange, that has mandated, especially in two areas, one in the board's diversity and in the climate risks area. In Europe, there is a body called ESMA, equivalent to the US Securities. They have also come out with some benchmarks to mandate this. Back home, before that, I also wanted to touch upon a couple of points. These things have been in existence, prior to the ESG term or the CSR term that you coined. These have been in different pockets. For example, we do have regulations related to air, water pollution and control, hazardous waste, Your Companies Act and stuff like that. That did exist, but what ESG does is makes it holistic, right? And then it is easier to mandate and get it all at one point. In India, SEBI, our governing body, they have also mandated, especially for the top 1,000 listed companies, they want them to disclose at all the levels of ESG, and there has been some guidelines to that as well. Now, what about the ones that are not beyond 1,000? So, that is still not mandatory for them, but I'm very sure the way we are progressing, we'll definitely get there. One last point I want to make is, it's not only just for public companies, the way it looks now, but you see, public companies have touch points with partners, contractors, service providers, and everybody else. So if someone has to mandate it, everyone has to play a role. If these people do not disclose to them, how would they go ahead and disclose it? So, everyone is a participant here and definitely mandated by the bodies that I already spoke about. Thank you.
Thank you, Neelam. Shekhar, now that it is enforced, how should the organizations deal with ESG?
Yeah, thanks Kalpesh for this question. As already mentioned by Narayan and Neelam, we understood now how ESG is, what kind of mandate it has on the organizations. Now, of course, this absolutely is the time for to know that what organizations can do to contribute in the ESG initiative and what kind of approach they should have to make the ESG exercise successful. So before I go on to the organization's approach, I would like to just highlight some of the points like which ESG has already put forward to organizations. Like if you notice, some of the factors like say be it the pollution control or emission norms or the internal factors which are like the employee engagement or the employee and leadership practices or the diversity or equality in an organization. All these factors used to be internal to an organization, which some of the organizations were taking care of. But now these factors have become external. Because as Narayan rightly mentioned, because it's not just the investor community which is interested in the ESG initiatives for any organization. There are also other stakeholders, be it the organization's own employees or suppliers, or to that matter, the customers. So all these stakeholders are taking active interest in knowing how the organization's contribution is taking place in terms of the sustainability practices. Like for example, you take any consumer. That consumer would like to buy a product or services from an organization which is like complying with the sustainability practices. The consumer will not buy any product if the organization's name is getting into, they're not fulfilling the emission norms or the best employee practices. So there is an external pressure to organization to fulfill these ESG norms. So and if you count the external factors and from the government bodies like both Neelam and Narayan mentioned about these norms which has been launched by the global agencies as well as the local government agencies. So that compulsion is already there. But apart from that, the organizations are also getting benefited by doing the ESG practices for their long-term sustainability goals. So in both ways, organizations will be benefited by adopting the ESG practices. So that's the overall background for why organizations should go for ESG exercise. Now, when it comes to the contribution or what kind of approach the organization should have, I would like to recommend that there has to be a proper roadmap to implement the ESG criteria or implement the ESG exercise. There has to be the dedicated people who can take care of, who can own the responsibility of getting the ESG in place. Now, the problem is, as you see, the global norms on ESG, these are not standard because every country or every region has currently the different norms. The new standards are coming in every year. So for organizations, it's getting difficult to follow one certain norms or follow one certain criteria, for which the organizations needs to be prepared by themselves. And the biggest thing for doing this is to collect the data, which is very critical when it comes to organizations' roadmap for ESG. So they have to have the complete understanding of the global norms. They have to have the complete understanding of the format which is required to submit their reports or to track their performance in the ESG exercise. So once they have that understanding, they can fetch in the data in terms of what is required to submit the document to the government agencies. And once that is clear, then organizations can go ahead in deciding the roadmap to fulfill these ESG initiatives as per the government norms, because that should also match with the other agencies from the global area. So that's my take on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Shekhar. So now that there is no escape, Renu, what if organizations want to get away without, let's say, making a declaration or, let's say, complying with the norms?
So Kalpesh, as already been discussed by three of the panelists, I would say like when a company is trying to escape, there is a big no for that. And in case if they are trying to do it, then they should be ready with the consequences they will be facing in terms of maybe investors might take back a seat. They might not invest in their companies. And more often what happens is like people or company, they think like the cost of declaring ESG is very high, and that is why somewhere they take the back seat and they don't do it. But if a bigger picture we see, they actually risk a very cost to capital, and it's a very high risk to them, because for small companies like those companies who are we can say small companies who think like, no, we may save some money if we don't declare this, but they don't know like, no, when they are keeping their investors unhappy, it's affecting their balance sheet. And sometimes like, no, they might be penalized with some fines. And also in another turn, if you see, anyways, it is costing a lot to their companies. So it is like we should have, every company has to declare. And yes, when we are talking about rules and regulations, they have come into the picture completely. It has not been, as Neelam has already discussed, like we had this since 2005, we had this in picture. But we are proud to say, like India was the very first country in 2013 when they make it mandate, though it was not so systemized and it was in the picture. And under section 134M 2013, if you see, we already had this, but companies were not that serious about it. Now when it has been already got a mandate, like top 1,000 companies should do it, they are doing it. And on global level, if we see, in US on federal level, it's still not there. So they are still in the process of it. In European regions, they have make it mandate by end of 2023, I'm sorry. all the companies have to declare their ESG report. And in APAC region as a whole, if we take, they're planning in between 2023 to 2025, they will be making it mandate for all the companies, be it public, private, anything. So it is a very mandate, and why it is mandate is it is a snapshot of your business impact. It shows the business impact in these areas when we see ESG. So it shows that business impact in all these three areas. And when an investor is investing in a company, he wants to see what are the risk, sustainability, and growth factors are there. So to balance or like to calculate, analyze those factors, you need to have that report. Otherwise, most of the cases these days, what's happening, they're not only seeing your business plan, they're seeing what is the sustainability factor you have, what is your strategy. So as the financial report is important for any company, even this ESG report declaration is becoming mandatory for all the companies to calculate their growth factor, to calculate their sustainability. And we are seeing there is lot of climate change, there is lot of things happening socially, environmentally, governance wise also. Every government comes in, there are no new rules and regulations coming up, but everyone has just one goal: to save this planet. Because whatever is happening, we all are seeing with this globalization and global warming, So we all are seeing this and we are experiencing. So any investor wants to know whether whenever he's investing in that company, whether the company is sustainable or not. Apart from this, when we see, it is not only restricted to that, it is also when we widen it, we see a wide range of stakeholders, we see the customers, so everyone get impacted. So it is there should be, as we say, the transparency of data is required there also. So that is how, when we know any company disclose, like they mention in their investors presentation, this is what our financial results are. That is how they have to make it mandate that they even show this ESG report declaration as well, so that they earn the trust of customers, they earn the trust of stakeholders and the investors. Thank you.
Thank you, Renu. I'm sure the companies are taking notes of what you just mentioned. So, Shekhar, I would like to come back to you. Do you think, does technology have a role to play in this?
Yeah, of course, Kalpesh. Technology has a very important role to play because unless you have a proper, the right appropriate technology to just get into the ESG initiatives, though no organization will be able to succeed in that. So as I mentioned earlier also, the organizations, they need to have some kind of very favorable response to the external factors. Like if anything is happening in terms of the market developments or economic developments, or be it the environmental practices. So the companies have to react to that. For example, I'm just giving you the latest example of the Silicon Valley Bank fall on that. So many investors or many other stakeholders, they would be interested to know how organizations are reacting to this. How can they make sure that the organizations will be managing the risks and opportunities generated out of these kind of external factors. So when it comes to this, and when it comes to adopting the right technology for the successful ESG initiatives, what first thing comes to my mind is the data analytics. Because all the ESG initiatives mainly depends on the data which they get it from various sources. Now this data coming from various sources is not in a consistent format. It comes from various platforms, it comes from various stakeholders. So the companies, all the organizations or companies, they have to collect this data in a proper format, which is required by the government agencies. And then we have to flow that data into proper analytics, which can generate some reports. And then second thing is to track the performance of an organization in the ESG initiatives. So how do you track that? That again needs the data. So you need to have some kind of AI related technologies to track the data and to monitor it and to keep it in such a format so that it can generate the periodical reports. Apart from technology, on technology, I would also like to mention one fact that organizations would like to go for green software, which is the new concept which is coming in. I just want to give one example of Green Software Foundation, which is founded by companies like Microsoft and the Linux, and as well as Accenture. So what does this foundation do? This foundation makes sure that the whatever softwares are produced or developed by companies, that algorithm is designed in a such a way that the companies will have minimum emission norms, minimum impact on the environment. So this green software has to be taken care of all the CIOs and CTOs in an organization. That's one thing. So apart from software, there are other technologies which organizations need to be taken into consideration, which are like efficient fuel management or certain data center optimization, because data center has been the area of concern for all the regions, all the companies. So companies have to optimize the hardware which is required for data center, or if possible, they have to migrate to cloud. So that will serve the purpose of reducing the emission norms. So to me, if you ask what kind of technologies will play a major role in succeeding in the ESG initiative, I would like to pinpoint the few of the technologies like data analytics, then artificial intelligence, IoT and cloud, as well as the digital twin, and of course the blockchain. So I'm sure my co-panelists will throw some more they will give the detailed insight on these technologies. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Shekhar, for highlighting few technologies. Now that the topic is regarding technology strategies for driving ESG initiatives, I would request the panelists to elaborate on those technologies you just mentioned.
Thanks, Shekhar, for getting the technology angle. And so if I may add, I may want to touch upon two technologies, mainly the artificial intelligence and IoT. So now let's start with AI, and I'll give 2-3 examples for AI. I'll give 2-3 examples for IoT just to drive home the point. So for AI, it all depends upon what kind of role or what kind of the company the role is playing. So for instance, if you take a simple example that today a company is monitoring its ESG disclosure, ESG score, it wants to really be rated well and wants to see opportunities in terms of where they can score good in terms of ESG, then AI tools, AI insights, those kind of softwares, add-on softwares are very much available, which can go along with their dashboard, and in order to enhance their ESG score and so their stakeholder value will get instanced. So this is one of the most simplistic ways. Other ways, suppose if you are a company which is, into monitoring or watchdog kind of an, company which is monitoring whether the disclosures made by the companies are right, or are they just cherry picking some, carbon credits or some disclosure and then not disclosing something else. AI can play a role to find out if the company is misbehaving or misreporting such kind of activities. And a third example which I really like is what is called as responsible AI. Now remember, even when you're running an AI program, that is still you will require compute resource, you will require storage resource. Also, you will need to train the neural networks in order for the AI to be, run. Now, you cannot do that, just like that. Otherwise, it's a waste of energy, waste of compute resources. So you have to even optimize what kind of AI is required and only run what is required in order to aid your ESG initiatives. So I thought that responsible AI was a pretty interesting development as far as AI is concerned. Then coming to IoT, pretty obvious use cases. One, of course, is the energy efficiency. Energy is a very important criteria when you are doing ESG initiatives. So in terms of monitoring energy, in terms of optimizing energy, finding resources where energy is being wasted. So a lot of things on energy management. Second could be in terms of environmental monitoring. Again, you will be monitoring soil pollution, weather patterns, environmental, parameters, and the entire, environmental parameters. That is again very important. The third one is, of course, a responsible supply chain. Now, right from the place where your product is sourced till it is sold to a customer, the entire value chain or the supply chain can be mapped. And if at all there are effects on the environment, those also could be monitored and corrected. And you can bring in the social aspect also into the IoT. For example, if the human conditions are not right, child labor, human trafficking, or the way in which the employees are treated, even those social aspects through, connected things and connected gadgets, those even can be monitored. So I think these are the some of the examples, in AI and IoT. And maybe I'll ask my fellow panelists to throw some light on a couple of more technologies.
I would like to add. Yeah. So two of my favorite ones. One is digital twin, and the other one is the blockchain that I would be talking about. Now, I'll just take you away from IoT world to the production floor now. Digital twin, as we all know, is moving all the hardware and everything onto the cloud. So you just put all your processes, your product data onto the cloud, and then start to monitor that. Right? That's an easy way to fail fast, optimize there, and make mistakes, and then correct it. Right? So less wastage there. So ESG, when we're talking about ESG, there is a lot of footprint from this that can be captured. Second advantage that I see digital twins contributing to is that gets you to a single source of truth in terms of data. Now, when we are talking about data and the data aspects that, let me face the audience, sorry. Okay. So when we are talking about digital twin and the single source of truth from a data angle, the data is the most important ingredient in all this discussion, right? How to gather that data from various sources and put it out for auditing purposes. Now, it's easier to do this through the digital twin. Another very important and classic example for digital twin is the maintenance part, right? You can see factories still using those old, overused, emission throwing machinery. They can just take that away because now they know that it cannot be optimized anymore. You just can throw it away, get a new one, because the cost of getting one new one is definitely more. I think Renu did touch upon the cost of having and not having, right? Let me get back to blockchain now. Blockchain, as we all know, is storing a lot of data, starting from the source till the end. Mr. Ryan did talk about the whole value chain. What blockchain does is a little bit more than that. It not only tracks things from raw material to the consumer, it also touches upon things beyond that. How much water did you waste while doing all this? How much waste did you generate while doing all this? Now look at this. If you get all this data, how easy does it become to get into your audit reports, right? So that is one easy use for blockchain. Another very classic case for blockchain usage is your smart contracts. All this emission data and everything can be captured at one place, and then you just use it for your ESG purposes, right? So look at the combination of these technologies. Your digital twin gathers your data, and your smart contracts put that and uses it for audit purposes. I also want to bring one point, to the audience and everybody else, is that this is something that will not be solved by just one technology or one data source. There has to be a multiple and a holistic approach by organizations and by governing bodies also to get that into place. So that was my my take on this. Thank you.
So, Neelam, I would like to add with your points. And as Narayan and Neelam has already discussed about the technology, the main thing what I want to talk about here is data. Because whenever we are talking about any technology today, the thing is where is the data and how are we processing that data in terms of technology, and how are we using that data to gather the report or gather the result what we are desired for. So when we are talking about data, take an example like sustainability data platform. So sustainability data platform, what it does, it gathers and analyzes the ESG data from operations for the value chain. So what happens is whenever this data is gathered, it is being used by stakeholders, it is being used by investors, it is used by analysts. So in different forms the data is gathered and it is used. And when analyst is using, the analyst might use it to maybe compare the company or to see what is the ESG scoring of that company. When an investor is taking that data, maybe he might be seeing what is when we are talking about the green support operation. So maybe for that they might be looking for, as we are already discussing, they might be looking at for sustainability. And when any stakeholder is looking for, they have their purpose. And in addition, even policymakers make use of this ESG data also. So our data sustainability is one of the very niche and very important topic. And companies, like when we are talking about Accenture, Microsoft and all, along with their initiatives of having these, they are even having the COEs for these data sustainability platforms. They are having their own center of excellence. Many companies, not only these companies, there are many companies who are having center of excellence where they are processing this data and they are utilizing this data to gather the proper information, and they want to utilize this data. So how they resolve this problem, how they can resolve and make this world a better place, we can say. Thank you.
Thank you. So, thank you everyone, for chipping in and, shedding some light on the kind of technologies we just Shekhar, highlighted. I believe we still have some time, and I would really appreciate if the audience could ask a few questions from the panelists.
Can you please share some use cases for the technologies discussed?
So I would like to answer that. As we are discussing about the technology already, we see digital twins. So these days in oil and gas industry, if you see, and mining industry, you see, we are having these examples. In Microsoft, GE Digital, they have also recently implemented these in the companies. So we are having these, and I think Shekhar would like to talk on this more.
Yes, Renu, you are right. In fact, I just came across the one announcement from GE Digital that they have already come up with an autonomous tuning software, which monitors the temperature and the fuel efficiency regularly, and that gives that results in perfect emission norms, reduce the emission norms in as per the standard. So that's the one thing which I would like to quote from GE Digital.
Great. Thank you, Shekhar and Renu. Do you have anything to add, Narayan?
While Shekhar was speaking, something came up my mind as well. Microsoft also tied up with a large mining corporation. It's a large global mining corporation, and they have developed the entire, mining operations digital twin. The entire operations have been captured, have been mimicked, and so the entire process efficiency has been improved with the help of that. And secondly, while they did that, they also reduced the energy consumption minimum to a minimum extent. So they have really made use of this latest technologies with partnerships and with ecosystems. So that's another example which came to my mind. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you.
So I have a question. What do you think? What are the gaps we have in the system?
I would like to take that question. Yeah. So I wouldn't say there are any gaps in the system. In fact, that is otherwise. The ESG declarations are making things easier for, they are actually identifying the gaps that already existed in the system. Let me give you an example to this. So we all know these electric vehicles, and we are so much, into it nowadays. Most of us have electric cars. Now the batteries that get into these electric cars contain something known as cobalt. I'm sure we have all learned that in school. Cobalt is mined in Democratic Republic of Congo. Now from there it is shipped to South Africa, and from there it is again taken to China, and there it is manufactured, and then again from China either it is taken to closer to its production unit or it is directly manufactured in China. So look at this, look at the value chain. To create something sustainable, the type of path, unsustainable path you are taking, that becomes visible now with ESG declarations. Not only the E part that I'm talking about, I'm also talking about the S part. While there's a mining, I think the panelists did talk about the human trafficking involved, the life conditions of people who are working in those mines, those also are taken care while you do these ESG declarations. So a very big loophole, or I would say the gaps are very much visible now after the ESG declarations are made mandatory. Thank you. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you. Thank you, Neelam. Before we conclude, one final word from all of you all. What should the organizations do in order to ensure that they comply within the rules and norms that have been stated?
Okay. So As far as I'm concerned, I would put one point that ESG initiatives should be right top at at the CEO's level. It should be right at the top of the organization. The CEO should be driving it day in and day out, a top-driven approach. Because once all the stakeholders see the importance that is given by the CEO in the day-to-day operations, I think it will flow on much more seamlessly. So top on CEO's agenda is my takeaway. Thank you.
So I would like to say like transparency in data strategy is like the must, as I have already discussed about sustainability of data platform. So that is my take on this.
Yeah, I would like to recommend suitable vendor ecosystem, because for succeeding in the ESG initiative, we need lots of technologies. We need the platform providers, we need the software and service providers, technology providers. So all we need is the vendor ecosystem, which has to be competitive in nature to provide such kind of technologies and software.
I would tell every business to be prepared and be ready. Guys, don't be surprised when you look at the regulations changing. These regulations are changing on a daily basis. As we speak also, I am sure somewhere someone is creating a new regulation. Be agile, be flexible to accommodate all those changes. I'm sure we have a long way to go in these initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. I would like to sum up this session in 3 key takeaways. First, that there is no escape for any organization. Second, is that they also need to make sure that they have technology strategies in place to drive ESG initiatives. And last but not the least, that they should also have a proper vendor ecosystem to adopt these kind of technologies. I thank everyone for being a part of this discussion, and I thank the audience for being available and asking those valuable questions. Thank you once again. Kalpesh Parmar signing off.